Hi there guys, today we're going to be looking at how to replace the wheel cylinder on a car. That's when you have drum brakes. It's basically the caliper for drum brakes. I'm going to show you in as best detail as I can. Mine is a 99 Jeep Cherokee 4-liter Sport with the 9-inch rear brakes. And I'm going to try to make this as comprehensive as possible. So first get the wheel off, get that out of the way, and then what I prefer to do is get the line loose. Or I'm sorry, after you start using brake clean, you're not going to want to use a torch. And if this line gets seized and can't turn, you have risk of damaging that brake line. So I'm going to torch that gently and then get it loose. Besides that, there's the two 10mm bolts. This is pretty standard, not even just for a Jeep. This is just pretty standard for a drum brake assembly. Then I'm going to go ahead and pull off that drum, and I will show you guys where I'm at after that. Okay, this is tools you're going to want for doing this job. I have a pair of dikes out. These are Stanley. They're junk. Doesn't matter really. They just need to have somewhat grip. These aren't spring, but it would be kind of nice if they were. I have a 3/8 ratchet with a 10mm. That's all going to depend on what size your bolts are. 10 is pretty standard considering this is an American car and I'm using a 10 as well. It's pretty standard. Here's a line wrench. This is pretty cheap at anywhere you go. Mine is from, I think, AutoZone. It is 7/16 on one side and 3/8 on the other. That's pretty common. My line is a 3/8 line. Just a small flashlight or any sort of light will really help you out. This one's kind of junk. I have a stream light as well, and I'll be using that. Then obviously the wheel cylinder itself should look something like this. As you can see, that's where the two bolts in the back go. It's pretty basic. I'll explain it a little more when I pull it out of the package. I have something to get my wheel off, obviously. I have a Milwaukee electric impact. Just something worth noting, if you have a spacer setup in the winter, it's a good idea to just go ahead and use some anti-seize on your studs. It's a lot more of a pain for it to get stuck for a while. I also have PB Blaster for the springs and stuff on the inside of the drum brake. So as you can see, that's the drum brake assembly right there. This is the piece we're going to replace. I'm going to not have to take apart everything. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these first two springs off. My best tip for that would be use those dikes and grab around this area here. And from there just pull as hard as you can, and that's how you'll get it loose. If you've been told that your master or wheel cylinder was bad and you're not sure, take a little pocket pry screwdriver like this and just peel back that boot. As you can see, fluid is running out of there from the bottom. As you can see, there's fluid running down. All that fluid right there. Okay, so I'm just gonna spray everything down. I need to spray the pads down, this backing area down, all around here on those springs and stuff like that. I'm just gonna get those as clean as possible. I kinda have to move the camera away while I'm doing that. I'm just gonna be using Valvoline heavy duty brake parts cleaner. If you can find it chlorinated, I would suggest that. This is non-chlorinated, but it'll do the job just fine. I just find a lot more, I feel like it does more if it's chlorinated, but that's just me. Okay, I just used an entire can of brake clean. It's drying off now. It's still kind of dirty, so I might use a rag to try and wipe it a little bit. But I'm just going to show you guys how everything is oriented in case you took yours apart and you're having trouble getting them back together. On this right side, you got that first spring up there. It comes around and wraps that. That's the first one. And then this one. Usually these are assembled a little bit different. And that e-brake cable you see in the back right here goes in front of this little plate. But it doesn't really matter, I guess. I'm gonna switch it because that's how I'm used to seeing it. If we were taking off the shoes today, you would be using that part there. I would suggest changing your shoes. I'm not going to because obviously I still have a good bit of pad left. They are worn a little bit funny, but nothing too much of a concern for me. Down there you have your tensioner. I'm not going to be touching that at all. You see you got that other spring, and then the e-brake cable in the back there, which leads around to here. That all connects. This one goes on with just holding the spring, nothing with that metal frame, and that is the cable that wraps back around. All pretty basic stuff, works pretty simply. All we're going to be doing though is pulling off these two top springs, and that cable and this little bracket is going to have to come off and out of the way to get that little cable back. And I'll show you where I'm at after I do that. Here are the drum brakes all disassembled like I said I was going to. All I'm doing now is pulling out the two bolts in the back. As you can see, there's a gap between both sides. It's not touching those boots at all. On both sides it is far away from it. There's a gap. And then I'm just going to take those two bolts out, and I should be able to position it down this way and just pull it right out without taking anything else off. My line is already loose, so I'm not too concerned about that anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and take these little bolts out. That's all they should look like. They shouldn't be very long or anything. This additional, I didn't mention this in the beginning, but I have just a small screwdriver here that I'm going to help break that little seal loose. Depends on the age of your car if you're going to need that or not. I'm just going to move the pads a little bit as I have to and just pull it right out. Old wheel cylinder assembly. As you can see, just very aged. As you can see, we must have just not been making a correct seal right there with these two or something like that. And you can buy rebuild kits, which I would be personally very interested in. They did not have them in stock, and I just wanted to get this issue dealt with really. But mine does not have a core, so I'm just throwing it out. But good memories, great. Glad to have had that on my car. Now, as far as getting the area cleaned up for the new one, you might notice like a small rubber gasket-ish material. They do not come with a replacement for that. So I try to just clean it out of the way as best as I can. But I will probably end up using a little bit more brake clean and cleaning all that up in there, just making it look decent. Before installing the new one, I'm going to take a look and compare the old to the new to make sure I have the right part. Make sure the bolt holes are in the same place, make sure that the bolts thread into the new one, that the line is in the same place, that the bleeder's in the same place. Because if these were switched and the bleeder was on the top here, then we would have a problem. That would be for the other side. I compare lengths, and I obviously make sure that new one compresses. Although you're getting it from a very certified parts dealer like AutoZone or Advance Auto, you still should check. Dumb things like that have happened in the past. This is as clean as I'm going to get that area back there. I'd say it looks fine to me. I'd really like to use a whiz wheel and actually make this entire drum brake assembly look nice, but I don't really have that tool to me at the time, so I'm going to make do with what I got. Wrap around that and go over that post right there. And then, can't remember which spring is first, so I might have to look back at the footage. I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this one. These springs can be a real pain to get on, but just try to get leverage, and then it goes pretty easy. Make sure everything's sitting the way you want it with that little piece in the back. That should have a little like ring it fits over. So just make sure that's where it needs to be, and that there's room for that other spring. There you go. Okay, so this is all done, all cleaned up. I put some PV Blaster on stuff like I said I was going to. While I have it off like this, I'm going to go ahead and take this time to put some anti-seize on my threads. And that way when I go ahead and put that spacer back on, those lug nuts won't be so glued to the hub. Alright, the drum here, I brake cleaned it off a little bit so it's still drying. I already checked to make sure that my e-brake and everything works. So now I'm going to go ahead and bolt on my spacer, and then I have to wait for some help to bleed my brakes. We're here with the fish god. He's going to be helping me bleed the brakes today.
Yes, sir.
Nice guy. So he's going to pump it 5 times. He's going to pump it 5 times and then hold it for me. And I'm going to go ahead and bleed this out. Alright, I'm going to go drive it. One very important thing is when you start it, you got to pump the brakes and make sure that light goes out, but just make sure you pump the brakes because you will get yourself very wrong if you don't do that. Alright, well that's it for this video. That solved the issue, so glad I got that done. Me and Chris are going to go make a video now. Hopefully getting a little fired up. Are you sure? Like hopefully getting a little like little angry on the video. I'm not trying to, but I think it would be interesting to squash the muscle beef. But that basically fixed it for this. My brake light's out. My brake light hopefully will stay out, and now it doesn't pull so hard. So if you guys had that issue, then get the. It stanks out. It's static. It's out. But we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.